All right, so we finished the front bumper. Now it's time to move right into the suspension. Okay, so we are doing the Ironman Foam Cell Pro suspension. Their stage, I believe it's stage 3 that it is. So it's going to replace rear, upper, and lower control arms with upper and lower adjustable control arms or trailing arms, right? It's going to replace the torsion bars, rear springs. We did heavy so that we could carry all the weight. We've got rear drawer system, dogs, kids, rear bumper, all that kind of good stuff. Diff drop, one of the unique things about the Ironman kit is it does come with reinforcements on the front lower control arms for the torsion bars. So we're going to go through that whole process. But before we jump into the suspension, we are going to bring in some subject matter experts, right? So I'm going to bring in from Commonwealth 4x4, the owners, Chris and Clayton, to kind of walk through underneath our Land Cruiser with me, kind of point out some problem areas maybe that we have and some things that we should think about doing in the future, because I don't know, right? Other than driving and teaching you how to drive these, sometimes it's nice to bring in some guys who are a little bit smarter so they can point out and maybe some maintenance items or other things like that that we should focus on. So let's meet up with them and see what we can figure out. We are underneath the Land Cruiser working our way through our suspension. Commonwealth 4x4 has given us a lift for the day, so we're working our way through there. But I brought out the owners, Clayton and Chris here. Clayton has a ton of off-road knowledge, especially with Land Cruisers. He's got like probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 Land Cruisers floating around. He probably doesn't even remember where they all are. Allegedly. Chris has one Toyota 4Runner, and the rest are Jeeps, and he does have a Ford. But they have a lot of knowledge in the off-road world, so as kind of subject matter experts, we're going to kind of let them take a look underneath our Land Cruiser. Again, it's been beat on, and point out some things that they would normally kind of point out in an inspection for a customer, and some things we should think about short-term, long-term, you know, needs to be done right away type stuff. So pass it over to them and let them kind of take a look and see what we got.
She's dirty. She's been road hard and put up wet. No, this is a, if you guys know, of course, watching Mike and Sarah and all the training and the travels that they do, this vehicle has seen a ton of use, and it's definitely time for a refresh, some maintenance, some things that need to be addressed on it. When we're looking over a vehicle and we put it on the lift, I mean, there's a couple ways you can start. As long as you're covering all the bases, really no wrong way. Whether you start front to back, back to front, we'll start back here since that's where we're at. But we want to give a visual inspection, of course, on components that we know are able to be visually inspected. There's some other things that you have to dive into maybe a little bit deeper to really know their condition and wear. But you know, first thing we'll start looking at is just the overall suspension components, since that's a lot of what we're focused on here. With the 100 Series Land Cruiser, it's kind of interesting because it's the only Land Cruiser that Toyota ever made that used a torsion bar front suspension system. Prior to that, you would have had a solid axle on the 80 series, the 70 series still solid axle, and for the 100 series from 98 to 07, at least in the US, it was a torsion bar front end, which is a little bit different. We'll go over that. And then they went to a traditional strut assembly or coil and spring assembly on the 200 series, and that's what you have on the new 252. So the rear of this is really, really similar to an 80 series Land Cruiser, and it's the fact that we have essentially 5 links, I guess you could say. We have our track bar back here, which is going to position the axle left to right, and then we have our upper and lower control arms on the front of the axle that we'll look at in just a second. So looking at the back of the axle here, I want to make sure that we're not seeing any cracking, damaged, rust, anything like that on this pivot point on the axle side of the track bar, and then also on the frame side where Chris is at there. And again, that's because there's a lot of stress put on this track bar. If you start to have movement on a solid axle vehicle in the front or on rear, you know, it's a lot of times bushings or things like that can be worn. So what we're going to look for is, do we have any play in this track bar? Is it moving? You know, can we manipulate it with just our hands? And then beyond that is the connection point, the bracket on the frame and the axle side in good shape, because we've had some of these come in before where they've got rust holes. It's notorious for holding moisture or having dirt and everything pack up inside of here, and that stuff sits over time, and it causes rust to set in. So it's a good idea if you guys off-road a lot to kind of get underneath the vehicle every so often and spray it out, give it a good cleaning a couple times a year, especially if you've been off-roading it, or bring it to a shop, let us inspect it, clean it up, and make sure everything's good. So track bar there, Chris, what do you think of that end? Everything looks...
It does. I mean, the track bar itself, I think, is probably getting ready to probably need a refresh. It is definitely getting a little more than just surface rust around the joint fittings. So I'd be able to check that and want to get that updated here soon as well.
And we'll ask Mike and Sarah too. That might be something with this new suspension that they're putting in from Ironman. A lot of your suspension companies will offer a replacement rear track bar that actually allows you to lengthen or change the distance of this connection point here. What happens to you guys is as we lift a vehicle, because this is a fixed length, if we put taller springs in or we raise the vehicle, all of a sudden this track bar, because it's a certain length, it pulls the axle. And in this case, it would pull the axle to the passenger side. And what happens there is if you have too much lift in the back and you don't address repositioning this axle where it's supposed to be, you're going to drive down the road and your rear axle is not going to track exactly the same as your front wheels, and it's going to cause it to drive kind of funny. We call it dog legging. You see that in some of the vehicles. When that happens, it's kind of noticeable. It's something that you certainly want to address with here. I know Mike's got some taller springs he's put in for the new bumper he put on the back, weight and everything. There's going to be swapped out. So that would be something that we would mention to the customer or to Mike, is look at addressing this rear track bar to make sure that we can reposition the axle where it's supposed to be.
And it's always something, any of your solid axles, whether it's on the front or the back, an adjustable track bar is always, whenever you lift the vehicle, it's something, not a lot of lift kits included. It's an extra thing you got to add in that if you don't know, you don't know. So
let's see, beyond that, I like to look at the back of these two, especially with bumpers and things. This one's got a new one he put on because stuff starts to collect back here over time. So we're just looking to make sure that cross members, the condition of it, we don't see any huge rust spots. This one looks really good. It's not a northern vehicle, which is great. Even in Kentucky, this one spent the majority, if not all of its life before in North Carolina. But even in Kentucky, we use salt on the roads, and so we start to see rust issues. We get a lot of trucks out of Ohio, Indiana, stuff like that, and they can get pretty crusty. So that's something you want to kind of keep your eye on too. Lots of connectors back here. We won't talk about some of them. No, that's an add-on trailer harness, it looks like. But those are things to be aware of as far as, if you're not using connectors, let's try to make sure that the wires are secured. Let's put something over where the pins are so that they're not getting filled with dirt and mud, so that if you go to plug a trailer in and it doesn't work and you wonder why, that's probably a good indicator. So there's some things there that we would put on our report and recommend or address, especially if there's factory connectors that need to make sure that they have systems they support.
now I know with the 4Runners, one of the areas we really try to look at is the spring purchase, because they can collect mud and water and everything else. Is that something we look for on the
Absolutely, yeah. I haven't seen it as prevalent on these, and not to say it certainly can happen. The 4Runners, like you mentioned, were notorious for it. I think especially the third gens. But that's an area that's under a lot of pressure. It's a lot of stress. It's load bearing. We need to make sure that it's acceptable condition, that it's able to do its job. And so,
What about like rust like that right there?
Yeah.
Is that something to be concerned about for us?
well, so what I do is I actually a lot of times will try my best to get inside of there, and you've got a lot of dirt and stuff, but we've had, again, some of these come in and you can feel the inside of the frame wall, and some of them that have really bad rust, and maybe it doesn't look like it from the outside, but it's on the inside, you'll have just chunks that start coming out. I mean, just scale, and it's just layers of that iron, that steel that have started to separate, and it crumbles off. That is absolutely a concern, because you can have cancer that's hidden inside of these cross members, which again are load bearing. They're important to the structural integrity of the frame. With yours, again, because of the outside condition and then feeling inside, it's actually really good. I'm not getting any scale. There's no buildup in there. At least on this spot, you've got a little bit on the outside here. Again, inside feels good. This would be a good opportunity, though, to spot treat, maybe take a grinding disc, a flap wheel to those areas, and take some of that surface spot rust off, clean it up, get it to bare metal, hit it with a coat of something protective, whether it's rust reformer, rust encapsulator, something base coat to protect it. And then something we offer and we do a lot of vehicles with is the wool wax, which is a lanolin base. I've got flooring apparently on the mine. It's a lanolin based coating for rust prevention that acts as kind of a barrier to either moisture or oxygen getting to the base metal. So if you already have rust that started, it'll basically pause it if it's applied correctly. I say rust needs three things to happen, right? It needs oxygen, moisture, and the presence of iron. And so if we can keep one of those things from mixing with the other two, we either prevent rust or we pause or stop it. So again, this is more cosmetic right here, and that's just for water and stuff that builds up and kind of comes down and collects right there and just offers that. So you can touch these up, hit it, stop it from becoming a problem, and then do an undercoating to kind of add extra protection if you wanted to.
I'm gonna take a crack in the dark here, Mike. That you might need a rear pinion seal.
No way.
And then also on your transfer case.
The benefit to this leaking is that if it's leaking, at least it has oil in it, right?
100%.
So it may not have enough, but yeah, absolutely, it's a leaking rear pinion seal. And you can tell that too because you're following. This one's dripping pretty good. You've got that line. It just comes down, and where this is wet and it looks like it's the regular metal color, that's that gear oil that's just coating it. Great thing is it's preventing rust. Bad thing is it's not doing its job inside of your rear differential.
So how hard is it to do like a rear pinion seal?
It's something that can be done in your driveway. It's not the most fun thing. I mean, the benefit of a shop is that we can put it on a lift, we can access it. You need to disconnect your rear drive shaft. You have a dust cover right here that kind of comes off, and then that seal needs to be pulled out and a new one carefully put into place. So, there's some great tutorials in the Toyota world that are on I Hate Mud. There's YouTube that's out there, so it's something you want to tackle yourself. I would say it's probably on the lower end of the wrench spectrum, but it's really important too. And it's not something that's overly costly. So maintenance stuff like this, a pinion seal's maybe $25-$30. Takes a little bit of time, takes some time in a shop, but you not addressing this can lead to, worst case, a full rear end rebuild because you've lost your oil, it's overheated, and your rear end locks up or you've got ring and pinion issues. So what starts as a small problem, if it's left untreated, can get really expensive.
I think
Go ahead.
I was going to say a real common one I think we see is the bushings on shocks and just bushings in general. Right here, it's a good indication that these bushings are kind of starting to push out a little bit. So definitely it's kind of the thing, if you're seeing it on your rig, it's something that you want to start thinking about upgrading or replacing those bushings.
Look at that little guy right there. Looks like
Yeah, it's low-hanging fruit, man. This is, and there's a lot of Toyotas, a lot of vehicles that put their shocks in a position like this, and that's just where it's come in contact with rocks. It's, that washer has been deformed. There's some companies that make little add-on rock guards that before you put the bolt in, you put that on there and then put the bolt, and it kind of reinforces that area, tries to prevent that deflection from happening. Yeah. So there's some neat stuff you can do to address it. This is rather common for vehicles.
Maybe try driving better.
Well, it's probably, Sarah's been known to drive this a couple times, right?
Yeah.
And the couple times that she's driven it,
that's right.
she probably did that.
Yeah.
Now, you pointed out a leak up here, Chris.
Yeah, on your transfer case. That's a juicy one.
It's not a leak, that's a waterfall.
Yeah. Looks like maybe
Our output seal or
front and back.
Yeah. So again, similar to your rear diff there, where you have the the drive shaft that goes into it. And to break it down really easy, the purpose of the transfer case is exactly what it says, to transfer power from the transmission to the front and rear axle. So on an all-wheel drive or a four-wheel drive vehicle, you're going to have some type of transfer case assembly, and it's going to have, a front drive shaft. In this case, we've got this one going right there to the front differential over by Chris. This is the output, the rear output of the transfer case that's going to take the rear drive shaft and apply power to the rear diff to make the wheels turn. There is a seal right behind here where that assembly is coming out of it. And its purpose is to hold the gear oil inside of the transfer case. Over time, those can break down, they can start to leak, they age, they crack. And so it allows our fluid to make its way out of the transfer case. And we don't want it to do that. We want to keep the fluid in. And you can see that's...
But that's a little bit more involved, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little more involved. Usually,
You have to take a whole.
Some of them you do. It's sometimes it's a lot harder to do that. I don't know if I've ever changed one on a 100 series. If I have, it's been a while. So some of these you can do maybe on the vehicle. It's a little bit tougher, for maintenance and cleaning it up and all that. It's nice to be able to drop the transfer case, separate it, pull it off, put it on the bench, clean it up, put the seals in, inspect it, make sure everything's
good to go.
Yeah, you can even see where the front output is dripping down onto our cross member that's supporting our transmission. So this is our transmission cross member right here, and that's our transmission mount. That's something else to inspect too, because all these mounts typically are going to be rubber-based factory. Rubber does a good job of absorbing vibration. Sometimes when you switch to poly mounts or things like that on like body mounts and stuff, NVH, noise, vibration, and harshness is what they call it in the industry. So NVH is transmitted through bushings and things. But a good thing to do is inspect anytime you've got a bushing. In this case, this is our transmission mount, our rear transmission mount, and that looks to be in good shape though. I don't see really any wear. It's not deformed. It's not cracked. Our exhaust system. We've got, you throwing any codes, Mike?
No codes.
No codes? Okay.
But I'm pretty sure there's a leak right underneath the passenger seat.
Yeah. I mean, you've got some separation starting between some of these flanges. And so again, there's gasket material that are in those. And those gaskets are resilient to heat. They're made of material that can withstand heat. But again, over time, they degrade. They get brittle, they age. And so where any of these flanges are, where you have different pieces of exhaust and you have these bolts and they meet, you'll have a gasket that's right there, and those can start to wear or go away, and that can lead to exhaust leaking out, causing that sound, probably what you're hearing. So certainly some things to inspect there. You also have O2 sensors. Usually there's an upstream and downstream little 10 millimeter bolts. If these get rusty, guys, they are a pain in the butt to get off there. And that happens a lot. So if you've got a newer vehicle and you think about it, hit those with some protectant, put some Kroll or something on them just to kind of keep them in good shape, because at some point you're going to have to pull O2 sensors and replace those, and they can be a real pain in the butt if they've frozen in place.
And Mike, I know you've already kind of started tearing into some stuff up here, and you did put some PV blaster on a few things to get, so you don't have leaks everywhere, which that's a good thing.
That's purposely discolored, yeah. Yeah, so you've got all new suspension basically that you're doing from Ironman, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So lower control arms, are we replacing those?
Not
No?
replacing,
Okay.
not in the front.
Okay.
Only the kit only comes with the torsion bars, the shocks, upper and lower control arms in the rear, and springs and shocks in the rear.
Okay. And this is what's interesting again about the 100 Series Land Cruiser being the only torsion bar front end. Mike has removed the torsion bars right now, but typically in this suspension setup, to add preload to these front lower control arms, you have these long pieces of spring steel that are splined on each end, and they're keyed, and they go to a point right back here that actually bolts the end of it in place, and then the other end goes into a fixed keyed setting up on this front lower control arm, and then you apply pressure that basically twists that spring steel. Those splines turn, and it adds preload that gives you your suspension travel in the front. So it does not use a coil spring like we see in most of your modern vehicles. Now, Toyota started doing a torsion bar front setup in '86, I think, on the pickup. I think '85 was the last year for a solid front axle Toyota pickup. Starting in 1986, it went to a torsion bar front end. And then they carried that over, for whatever reason, to the 100 Series Land Cruiser in 1998 up till '07. And then they went back to a traditional spring assembly. So torsion bars here, it's adding preload to our lower control arms to give us suspension travel. You'll notice that Mike's shock that he's running right here, it's just a shock by itself. There's no spring assembly to it. And that's very, very different from most of the vehicles that are on the road today. Almost everything that we see, minus I think the heavy duty Chevy and GMC 3/4 and 1-ton trucks, they still use a torsion bar setup. Some vehicles still use live solid front axle, but most of them are going to use a spring and shock assembly to give your suspension travel versus a torsion bar. So because it's a torsion bar setup on this vehicle, there's not lower cam bolts or concentric bolts that would handle the alignment of these arms, because these are under load. And so the lower control arm that on every other vehicle typically determines your alignment, it doesn't determine your alignment on this vehicle per se. What that does is we transfer to the upper control arm, and we have right here, these are called cam bolts or concentric bolts. We're used to seeing those down here, not up there. But this is a different setup because it's the 100 Series Land Cruiser. So with that said, Mike's running the factory upper control arms.
So you were saying, Chris, I need to replace those?
Yeah, looking at them, your boots here are, well, there's some left. Usually whenever you start seeing ripped boots or bushings like that, it's definitely a good sign to start thinking about replacing them. The boots are going to want to hold your grease in there, and it won't take long for all that grease to come out, and then you just got metal on metal, and that's never going to be good.
And what about those concentrics up there, Clayton?
Man, they look pretty rough. Like here's the rule of thumb is that I don't know if those has ever been replaced. This control arm, one of the bigger things that we have going on, and to build on what Chris just said with this torn boot and everything, this control arm only allows so much droop or misalignment when it comes down at full articulation or at full droop rather, and that ball joint right there will start to get in a bind. There's only so much that it's going to allow that when you start to lift this vehicle and we're trying to realign it back in factory specs, get it to drive straight, all that good stuff. Sometimes if you're running the upper control arms, the factory ones, and you've lifted and changed the rest of the suspension, we can't get it back into spec. And that I feel is probably the situation we're at now, is that you can tell this thing has been maxed out on its angles, and it's causing that boot and everything else to wear. So you can end up breaking a ball joint right there. You can have it snap, and then that's a really bad day on the trail, because then your spindle that holds your wheel is loose, and you're not having a fun day.
And odds are when that comes loose, a whole bunch of other stuff under here is going
it's
to
kind of
too.
a chain of reaction. Our recommendation, absolutely, with the vehicle, knowing how this is going to be used, how it has been used, the modifications made to it, the lift height, I'd absolutely look into doing an aftermarket set of control arms. And what that allows you to do is they are built with additional caster into them. They're a different shape. They're made out of different components, but they allow for a lot more misalignment so that this ball joint is not in that bind at its ride height that it's in now.
So what upper control arms do you guys typically go with?
So there's a lot of ones out on the market. The 100 series, there's not as many manufacturers that make a good set of upper control arms for the 100 series as some of the other vehicles. One that we've really come to rely on, and I think it punches above its weight class, is the Freedom Off-Road control arms. They're tubular steel. They use an OE style ball joint. They use rubber bushings, so you're getting a good quality setup, and you're getting something that wears well, that you can find replacements for, and they don't break the bank. They've got a really, really great price on them. So we've used those on a lot of setups recently because they work well, they do the job, and they allow you to not overspend. And so I know that with Freedom too, on the lowers, the uppers, they offer across the board on a lot of the Toyotas replacements where, even sometimes we can get new concentrics or new cam bolts. For these uppers on the 100 series, I think we've got an option of the OEM cam bolts up there, but also SPC makes a good aftermarket cam bolt that we've used a lot of times when we need to replace them. But those will get frozen in place. To kind of go back and answer your question, what happens with those upper cam bolts is they will rust, they will freeze in place, and then when you go to try to break them loose to get this vehicle aligned, it doesn't move. And then at that point, they either need to be cut out of there or extracted. New ones need to be put in. I think it makes a lot of sense why you've got this apart, to address that area, so you're not back in there 2 months from now, a month from now, or whatever.
Awesome.
I'd say the big plus side, despite the fact of how much you try to break this truck, the frame's still really solid. There's any rust is still very surface level. So now is definitely the time, with it being surface level, it's not going to get better. So looking at something to help mitigate that, like Clay was talking about with a wool wax treatment before. But aside from that, you haven't done any catastrophic damage to this vehicle despite your best efforts.
I'd trust this vehicle with how many miles are on it, Mike?
350,000.
There's not many vehicles out there with 350,000 miles on them or more, And we've seen a handful. We've had some Toyotas come in with over 400,000 miles where people are still daily driving them. They're maintaining them. And I mean, this has got the 4.7 2U ZFE in it. It's a phenomenal motor from Toyota. You keep that timing belt changed and you keep it from overheating. And you know, they joke it's the million-mile motor because it's done it. So it's a great platform. This is a vehicle that's worth maintaining and taking those precautions with, like the wool wax, making sure you're doing regular maintenance, keeping the pinion seals, all that stuff, because there's a lot of value here. It's not gonna leave you out there if you take care of it.
I know you had an issue with this on your last bumper, taking it off. I'd probably trim that guy off there too.
Yeah. I know it looks like alternator's been replaced recently, which I think you did a while back.
Yep.
Yep. Belts look really good. They look new as well. You know, we've got easy access to our oil filter right here because there's no skid plate. That's probably hanging around somewhere. You probably took that off. But otherwise, you want to make sure that stays covered. But yeah, I mean, the cross members, all of our load-bearing structures look really good. And you've got a lot of refreshes going on areas that they either could use it or need it as a preventative.
I know the CV boots look good.
Mm-hmm.
How about the tire?
The inner tie rod boot. It's interesting because this boot, you know, of course, keeps junk and stuff from getting in there. Because this boot wears doesn't necessarily mean that the joint's bad. But again, that's something where we want to look at our play on the tie rods. It's fine if they go this way, right? We can be able to turn it. It's the lateral movement back and forth. If you start to get play in these joints here when you're driving, your wheel's going to feel loose, you know, and it's a little more masked with an independent front suspension because of your rack and pinion steering. On a solid front axle vehicle, if you start to get worn tie rods or a worn track bar, like if this was a solid axle vehicle, we'd have a track bar in the front like we do in the back. If those joints get loose, that's where you hear the term death wobble happens. A lot of times that death wobble where the wheel starts to shake and it's not driving straight and it's ripping out of your hand, most of the time that's because you've got some worn bushing somewhere. And so not as evident or not as prevalent rather on an IFS vehicle. They mask it pretty well. You won't really get death wobble. But you do need to make sure that your tie rods are in good shape, because if you break one of these on the trail, that goes out, and then all your what it was, the movie Cars, we say ka-chow, you know, and your wheels are facing the opposite directions, that's when you've busted a tie rod.
So on this one, though, replacing that steering rack, that's kind of a maintenance item, isn't it?
It is a maintenance item, and yours is an earlier 100 series, and it's a little bit easier to get to. But man, the later models can be nightmares to really get access to get that steering rack out of there. We're talking sometimes unbolting the engine and raising it up to get the clearance to pull the rack out. It can be an expensive thing, but a rack and pinion or a steering setup on these independent front suspension vehicles, it's a major item, but it is something you need to watch for. They can start to leak. What happens is inside, this is our steering column or steering rack right here, and there are seals at different points in this rack. And again, just like a pinion seal or a transfer case seal, those seals can deteriorate. They can start to wear over time. You can have something go wrong in the rack, and it causes pressure to build up and blow a seal out. And you know, if you had a wet area up here and some stuff going on, we were losing power steering fluid up top, that would be a whole other conversation. So this one's probably, I would say, with 350,000 miles, it's probably been done once or twice. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that is a maintenance item. Get yourself a pair of flush cut cutters and go ahead and snip your zip ties off to make it safe for everybody. So,
At an angle, right?
at an angle.
Yes. Nice
Yeah.
and sharp.
Yeah, if you really want to do the job correctly, don't get flush cuts. Just get a regular pair of cutters or scissors and leave about a half an inch and cut it at an angle so it's got a nice point.
Yeah.
And
Your
that
wife's
way-
kitchen scissors. work
That way it
best.
reminds you when you're working on the vehicle of where you left your zip ties.
And a
Perfect.
chunk of skin.
Right. I have scars from that.
All right, guys and gals, we definitely got a couple of things to look at on Land Cruiser. They pointed out some things, and we may come back and revisit. Definitely right away, I'm going to get Sarah on getting us some of the Freedom upper control arms, because I think that's a huge deal, right? Last thing we want to do is get this all fixed up and then get on the trail and something to break. So we're going to look at that and see if we can get those squared away, and we'll show that on video. But huge thank you to Commonwealth 4x4 and Clayton and Chris for sharing their knowledge with us a little bit on vehicle inspections and some of the key points to think about. But you guys do offer like big like pre-trip inspections and stuff like that in the shop. How does somebody go about getting on the docket for that?
Yeah, best way. I mean, you can go right to our website. There's a little spot on there where you can request a quote or book a inspection time. We'll get back with you. Great time to do this, and we have a lot of folks that take advantage of this. Is coming up on the fall and winter time, when everybody's traveling this summer. You're putting miles on your vehicle, and then you come back, kind of go into hibernation maybe for the cold weather. That's a really good time to schedule with us, get it in, have it on the lift. We'll kind of do a full workup, let you know if there's areas that need immediate something addressed, or if it's things you need to watch out for, and then also what looks really good too. So that's kind of the three ways to break it out. But yeah, it's something we'd be happy to answer questions, try to be a resource for you guys. And I mean, the whole thing here is we want everybody to be safe when they're traveling. We've got our families in these. We're out exploring. These are supposed to create happy times. We just want to make sure that we have a vehicle that allows us to do that.
Yeah.
And we call it a pre-trip inspection, but obviously it doesn't have to be for a trip you've got coming up. Springtime when you're getting ready to pull your rig out in the beginning of the season, or before you're getting ready to put it away for the winter, if you want to go ahead and get it inspected, that way everything's good to go. When the weather warms back up, you can just go hit the trails.
And really, for you guys, mechanic work's just kind of a small piece of the pie, right? You guys work with some really big brands and built some pretty cool stuff. Tell us real quick about that too.
Yeah, we do a lot of what we call expedition level builds, where we'll have vehicles that come in that get everything from wheels, tires, suspension up to full systems such as water, power, propane, to where if you want to go out and live on the side of a mountain for a week and be by yourself and see everything that's beautiful out there, you can do that. So we do spend a lot of time. We get vehicles brought to us from all over the country for those type of things, and we're very fortunate to where we have a lot of customers that come back to us though between those trips to have upgrades done, to have things inspected. They know that, like Chris said, that they've got a trip coming up this summer and they're going to put 5,000 miles on the vehicle before they hit the road. They want to make sure they're not going to have any problems, or at least try to minimize that. And so we certainly offer everything from simple upgrades and wheels and tires to the full build.
I know we got at least one build that is currently on its way to Alaska right now, so that's not uncommon.
Got another one heading to Alberta, Canada. I mean, it's really neat too, because we get to hear and see pictures and get video from our customers and friends of what they're doing with these vehicles, and that's really the payoff for us at the end of the day.
So yeah, if we've built your rig and you're out there doing it, tag us on social media. We want to know what you're out there doing.
We want to live vicariously through you while we're here in the shop.
Yeah, we got to be turning
messing
wrenches,
with this.
So.
Awesome. Well, huge thank you to these guys and Commonwealth 4x4. They're out building adventure, guys. So we're going to jump back in, get to finish the suspension. Let's see what we can do.